Hey and welcome, I'm Solo and this is ZN Gaming. In this video, I'll be going over the new Gen 3 Starlink dish. Did Starlink just get good? Before I waste any more time, let's jump into it. So you're wondering if upgrading to Starlink Gen 3 is worth it, or maybe even just what is the difference between them. So first, let's just go over a few specs from the Gen 2. The Gen 2 router was a Wi-Fi 5 capable device, which isn't bad. It didn't offer any Ethernet port on the router, and you needed to buy an extra dongle for Ethernet. The dish also had a motor in it so that it could automatically move and tilt itself to the right position. The Gen 2 kit come with a router, a 75-foot cord, and a ground mount and dish. And again, no Ethernet adapter, no capability of Ethernet at all unless you buy a separate part. You needed to buy it separately. So if you already have a Gen 2 and have used the Ethernet adapter and had any kind of issues, you already feel the pain of this Gen 2. I had consistent issues over and over again with the Ethernet adapter. This was my main reason for upgrading to the Gen 3, but actually, is it any better? I have to say, it's hardly noticeable. The speeds are maybe just a little bit more stable, but I cannot stream at any better of a quality. I did a few 24-hour streams on Twitch and found I had only 2 or 3 times where it dipped lower than 2500 bit upload, and that's about the same as the old Gen 2. That was the same amount of interruptions I had with my old dish, so I found them exactly the same in that regards. I still had the dropouts at the same time, and I was still not consistently able to keep a really high bitrate on my stream without it stuttering many times. So 2500 was the sweet spot for both of them. Now, the Gen 3 kit come with a box with tearaway strips to open it. The first downside I come across was the box is not reusable, so if you need to return ship it or anything like that there, you had to tear it apart, so the box isn't really reusable. But this here kit come with the rotor. The rotor is Wi-Fi 6 capable and has 2 Ethernet ports on the back, which is a super big upgrade from the last gen. It came with the same 75-foot cord and the dish, but some big gains is, like I said, the rotor with 2 Ethernet ports. The rotor has Wi-Fi 6 capabilities. This here is just going to give you a little bit more performance and actually quite a bit more range, I found. The 2 main selling points for me was the Wi-Fi works at a much better distance. Before, it wasn't really reaching my upstairs and I was having a little bit of issues with dropouts. And now my Wi-Fi covers my house end to end without any dropouts. And my biggest issue with the Gen 2 was it was $500 price point and it didn't even come with the Ethernet adapter. You had to buy that separately, and most people ended up having to find out the hard way that they needed it. No, there was no disclaimer, there was nothing. Nobody mentioned it with the new gen. So if you didn't do a bunch of research before you bought it, you were stuck without an Ethernet connection for at least the first 2 weeks until you got one ordered. The Ethernet adapter actually needed the cord from the dish to plug into it, and it provided a very poor connection with the ends that were used on the cord. So I was many times getting it replaced and having internet issues and Ethernet issues just with the dongle. But the Gen 3 being only $299 Canadian with 2 Ethernet ports on the back and the cord having an RJ45. This was the second really big selling point for me. The RJ45 plug on it, it's not the same flimsy B connector, a connector from the old Nokia days that used to be on the Gen 2. I'm not sure why they used it. The Gen 1 had the RJ45 connector. The Gen 3 has the RJ45 connector. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know why they would have made the mistake and made that weird connection for the middle of it. It was so small and flimsy. It had problems with connecting. I had multiple issues. I had everything from my dish, rotor, and cord replaced about 4 times or 5 times since I got the Gen 2. So that was one of the biggest selling points, was the RJ45 and the extra range on the Wi-Fi. But then again, is it really worth it? The answer is actually no. And I'm saying that because if yours is working good, and you have no Wi-Fi issues, this upgrade won't even make a noticeable change at all into your internet or your connections. It won't go any faster and it won't be any better. If you're not having connection issues, I definitely don't think this here would be worth upgrading. It's a little bit more stable, but again, very little in my test was different from the Gen 2. But if you need more Ethernet connections, or if you're having issues with that dongle, or if you have Wi-Fi issues in your house where there's so many devices connected, and maybe if you're a power user, I think it is very worth it if you're a power user, but to the average person, they won't even notice the difference really, as it don't really make the internet any faster, only the Wi-Fi. Take that with a grain of salt. If you're just getting Starlink for the first time, I highly suggest getting the Gen 3 for $299 new. I would not even buy a Gen 2 for $100 secondhand. It would definitely be worth your time to start with the Gen 3 instead of the Gen 2. The issues and the special cord and everything that the Gen 2 needed, I definitely don't think it is worth buying secondhand at all. And I would definitely suggest if you're just barely getting into Starlink, yes, the Gen 3 is very worth your time. It's going to come out at $299. So even if you got an old Gen 2 kit for $100, your Gen 3 is going to be covered by warranty. It's going to have everything's brand spanking new. If you have an issue, you can call it in. If you buy a secondhand Starlink dish and you have a problem with the Gen 2, you're going to have to buy all those parts to fix it yourself. The reliability of the Gen 2 having those Ethernet issues, you might end up buying 3 different cords before you find out it's your modem or your dish. So for a new user, definitely worth your time to get the Gen 3. If you already have a perfectly good working Gen 2 dish, it's not worth your upgrade. It's not worth your time. If you have an Ethernet dongle and it works fine, you're not having any issues, you're not running out of connections, then I think it's fine and you should actually stick with it. I was very happy with my Gen 3 upgrade, and I've had no more Ethernet issues like I was getting with the Gen 2. The Gen 3 was very welcome, but again, take this with a grain of salt. Most of this is just my opinion. The testing shows they're both very similar for internet performance. That being said, let me know what your experience has been like with the Starlink and what problems have you run across. Are you enjoying it? Are you having lots of issues? Are you having no issues? And are you on Gen 2 or Gen 3? I don't really have any experience with the Gen 1, so that's not really something I'll be able to inquire too much about. But the Gen 2 and Gen 3, if you have those, let me know what your experience has been with those down in the comments below, and so everyone else will be able to at least just read through what everyone else has to say about it. It's not just my opinion, it's everyone else's experience. I might have just gotten a good experience with the Gen 3 compared to the Gen 2, and I might just have had a bad Gen 2 experience. But again, if you're on Gen 2 or on Gen 1 and you're thinking of upgrading to a Gen 3, I definitely don't think it is worth upgrading if you already have Gen 1 or Gen 2. If you're just thinking about picking up the service for the first time, a Gen 3 is going to be much better than buying any secondhand Gen 2, even if you really get a good deal on it. It's not worth it. Buy it brand new. That's not me advocating for buying a new dish. Like I said, if you have a Gen 1 or Gen 2, I would not upgrade to the Gen 3, but if you're getting it for the new experience, I would not get a Gen 2. The issues I had with it, like I said, I wouldn't want to be the buyer of that. So that's not what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest getting a brand new Gen 3. But that's it for this one here. Like I said, let me know what your experience has been like in the description below. And if you think I forgot or left something out, definitely leave it in the comments below. If you like or found the video helpful, hit the thumbs up and get subscribed for more content. Thanks for watching. Bye.